everybody, and welcome to the Wench Bench, where friends sit and talk about fabulous fictional females and how their stories have influenced us throughout our lives. My name is Fonda.
And my name is Alison.
Today, Alison and I are going to be talking about the movie Gunpowder Milkshake that we watched.
Yay.
It's a Netflix-only movie. We're going to give you a quick synopsis. Some feedback we got from our last movie sort of talk-along was, even though we thought we did a good job, there's still many people who haven't ever heard of or watched Legally Blonde. So our very short synopsis, I guess, confused some people when we talked about specific things. So we're going to do a little bit more of a detailed one, not too detailed, so you can still watch the movie yourself.
Yeah.
But hopefully enough that you kind of like grasp the setting of the movie.
Yeah. And there is going to be spoilers when we talk about the movie. Just gonna
always spoilers when we talk about a movie. I'm sorry, but if you're going to a podcast and someone's like, hey, we're talking about a movie, I think it should be a given nowadays that like content that will spoil the movie for you might be in there.
Yes. Yeah.
That's just my assumption, because I still find it funny when you watch something and in the title, if it doesn't say spoiler-free review, that means if you're watching a review or if you're watching something talk about something, I doubt it's spoiler-free.
Yeah, and I don't believe in spoilers so much because we're not going to be able to describe to you what this movie will look like or necessarily how you'll take it, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be different for everybody because it is a wild ride.
It's very interesting of a movie.
Yes. So, the synopsis for Gunpowder Milkshake.
Please have at her.
Samantha, played by Karen Gillan, is a deadly assassin for a powerful agency known as The Firm. Her mother was also an assassin named Scarlett, played by Lena Headey, who was forced to leave her only daughter 15 years ago for her own safety. When what should have been a routine job goes wrong, Sam must risk her life and her job to protect an 8-year-old girl as the two get caught in the middle of a gang war. Fighting off assassins and thugs, Sam and the young Emily reunite with Sam's mother and return to a place from their past, a library run by 3 women, which is a front for weapons and assassins that Sam had been raised in. The women fight off hordes of goons, but Emily is kidnapped, and they must now go and rescue her. After successfully rescuing her and killing the rival gang and proving to the Firm that they are to be left alone from this point on, they drive off into the sunset as one big, happy, found family.
Oh, the found family trope.
Oh, it's so good.
Love a good found family trope so much.
It is excellent.
So we're going to talk, we wrote some notes while we were watching it, so apologies if maybe at first it sounds a little weird and one-offish. I promise we're going to do our best to talk about this movie in a chronological order, but we might jump back and forth, because that's just how normal human conversations actually go.
Yeah.
I don't want to script this shit, so...
I'm far too lazy for that.
So it kind of starts out where Karen Gillan, as Sam, you see a dead person's body, and you see that, shadowy figure with, a weird sort of, trench coat, and, a funky little, hat that's blocking half their face. And my first thought was, oh, they're sending women to clean up a man's mess?
Kind of.
And that's how it started, because she's like, when they fuck up or something, they send me in. Which made me just think, is this a trope? Because I feel like I've seen that a lot, where it's just there's a woman in some sort of business creepy murder deal or whatever. There's always a female character who will be in charge of handling the man's mess in the movie.
There's it's a play on the femme fatale.
Yeah.
But a little bit less sexualized, I find, in this movie, whereas femme fatale can often fall into that she's using her femininity to win, whereas this This movie, I think, actually avoided that a lot. Like, all the women were just straight up murderers. It wasn't like, I'm going to distract them with my cleavage and then stab them. It was just like, no, I'm going to shoot you in the face, or I'm going to throw a gun at your head.
Either way. So that I thought was right off the bat a really nice sort of setup.
Yes.
Because it also wasn't like she was there to literally clean it. Like, literally, like, oh, I take the dead bodies that you left and I dispose of them. It was like, no, she's the one that kills the people.
Yes.
And leaves the mess behind.
Yes.
In the wake of the fuck up, kind of.
Yeah, and this movie is extremely aesthetically pleasing. I think I would describe it as neon noir, because it takes a lot of the feeling and the kind of with the voiceover and the trench coats and the way that it's set up and the kind of the dark setting. It's all very reminiscent of old noir films with detectives and stuff, but then it has all these insane pops of color and all of this like beautiful background neon, and so it's very aesthetically pleasing for me to watch.
On that note, I kind of like when we meet Sam sort of like in her house, one of the things I noticed was she was watching Bee and Puppy Cat on TV. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I also noticed she had like a anime Japanese t-shirt, and it was kind of like interesting because it was the first instance where we see her doing two things that appeared feminine or girly, if that makes sense. Like, we first meet her doing all these other things. She's like stitching herself up, you know, she's rough and tough, but she's watching Bee and Puppy Cat eating cereal and wearing a very cute, very adorable Japanese anime t-shirt that I couldn't peg down. But maybe it's obscure, and that's probably why.
Yeah, like, fashion-wise, they definitely play with, like, the feminine and the masculine styles, which I'll get into once we kind of get to the librarians, because I noticed a lot of that was played with in regards to those three characters. But yeah, she starts off in this very masculine-coded clothing, hair up, not... Clearly has been honed to be a weapon of a patriarchy, essentially.
Yeah.
And they've kind of almost found a way to like...
Yeah, but like, you work for the firm, so therefore you must dress like you're a part of the firm, and that's a man's world sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Among other things that pop up, there were a lot of tropes in this movie.
Yes.
Which were fun to spot and kind of like point out. One of them was like the absentee mom trope, because we get a flashback of Sam's past, and it's like the mom is there, and then they have a cute little moment with a milkshake, and they're in this like little diner, and then the mom's like, oh, I have to go make a phone call, which leads into shit hitting the fan, which leads into the mom having to leave in order to keep Sam safe, but Sam is in turn left at the hands of one of the members of the firm.
Yeah.
And it kind of like just starts like the absentee mom trope. Not only for Sam, but for the young female character, Emily.
Yeah. And sort of like in trying to save her daughter, she basically made her daughter follow in her footsteps, because Scarlett had originally also worked for the firm. And so it kind of like in leaving her and thinking that she was doing the right thing, she did the wrong thing.
Yep, that's how things happen, though. You're like, I need to leave because I think it'll be better for you. It's like, but you leaving is giving me trauma. So... Yeah,
and the locations in this movie.
There was a lot of lighting.
It is extremely surreal.
Yeah.
They do an excellent job at making it feel surreal and out of time. It's like you're in this kind of semi-dystopian... European world. Like, they have flip phones, but they called an Uber.
Yeah.
Which is really cool, and everywhere seems to be aware that there's gangs and assassins all over the fucking place. Like, the diner has like a no guns rule.
Yeah.
And they go to a hospital at one point that's very white and very bright compared to the rest of the stuff.
I thought it was a dentist's office because of the giant tooth, though.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I thought it was a fucking dentist's office.
Which I think kind of plays into the old movies where they didn't actually assassins didn't go to hospitals.
Yeah.
They went to people with minimal medical experience, like veterinarians and dentists.
Yeah.
And so it kind of is little nods to these old movies, which I think is very fun. You have this 50s neon style diner, and then that's juxtaposed with an extremely seemingly high-tech hospital, and then you go to a dilapidated mall with a video store and an empty bowling rink.
Yeah.
And unless you're a gang member or an assassin, you are not in this movie. There's like no bystanders except for the little girl.
Or the people at the diner.
Yeah, but like
some of the people at the diner at first are just bystanders until the end.
Yeah. Until I think only that first scene though we really see them. Every other time it's like, oh no, never mind. No, there's a couple scenes in the diner.
I'm like pretty sure there's a couple because it gets brought up a bit. The line of, can I lighten your load? Literally meaning, give me your fucking guns.
Yeah, literally meaning, give me your fucking guns. I do not want them in here, which is excellent.
Yes. I noticed that, like, in most of the scenes, especially in the bowling alley, and it could have just been a coincidence, I'm not sure. I don't really know what the director or the writers were going for in making the movie, because sometimes things could be just coincidence, right? But sometimes you like to think that the directors and the writers are hoping their audience is picking up on stuff. So to me, there was a lot of like lighting that had bisexual flag colors. Mm-hmm. So I was just kind of like, is it alluding to like I feel like, especially with the librarians and the mom, there was like some queer stuff. But I also don't know about Sam, because the movie avoids romance entirely, which is fine. But I was kind of like wondering, I'm like, is it like slightly like alluding to like queer codedness? Who's to say? I don't fucking know. But
there's not a lot of stuff on this movie to look up.
No, there's nothing really deep.
It's pretty minimal, but it's a really fun action movie.
Yeah. I think like in terms of if we're talking about like the unknown era sort of thing, I did find it really interesting how there were the flip phones, and then it was later, I called an Uber, and like it was really hard to pick down, because at first I was like, flip phones, early 2000s, but then they call an Uber and I'm like, that late 2000, like late 2010s, right? Like Ubers were like a thing in the States for most of the time, but then there's also like no laptops or computers.
Yeah.
So, like, it's really weird, because, like, obviously, if you're in the creepy space of, like, assassins and gang members, you are gonna have a burner phone, or you're gonna have XYZ, but even when you see, like, the offices of, like, the firm, even, like, those people had just, like, razor-looking flip phones. Yeah. And no laptops, and it was, like, very much so, I felt like they were kind of maybe trying... At first, it was succeeding until the Uber thing to make it feel like a timeless, quote-unquote timeless movie. Yeah. Where like, it's from this genre or this time of human life. But I don't know. It was just really like... I get confused when movies do that to me.
But I think... I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I think it did a really good job at upping that surrealist fantasy. Mm-hmm. That this is not a movie based in any form of reality. Mm-hmm. And that's a good, interesting way to write out all of those questions of why didn't they just track the phone? Why didn't you just do this? It's like with all of our technology now in things like spy movies and like even horror films, it is really hard to have to try and work around our technology, which is what would solve so many problems in old movies. And so by putting it in this weird sort of like unknown space and world, like I didn't find myself necessarily questioning it a lot until after the movie when I was thinking back on it. Like I was just kind of enjoying the ride.
I need to Google something, because like I know we said it was like based in Europe, so I'm just quickly looking it up. Okay, my Google search failed, but I was like, is Uber, like, there... Sometimes it felt like they were in Germany, sometimes it didn't, so I'm just like, Uber, in my understanding of taking taking German in university, it means like a super fan of, like, ooh, like Uber in love with you or something like that. But I was like, is Uber, does it mean taxi in another language? Because that's basically what it is, right? Like an Uber is so part of me is like, was Uber not weird then?
I have no idea.
Or did they fuck up and put Uber instead of saying taxi?
They might just not have cared.
That's true. I don't know. I'm diving too deep into it. Yeah. But did you feel like it was, in terms of like Sam's character, I got a lot of like Atomic Blonde and like John Wick vibes from her character.
Yes. Yeah. Karen Gillan has like a shocking way of playing like completely deadpan versus having like extremely like excellent emotional range. But it also very much gave me the feeling of her character Nebula from like Guardians of the Galaxy, which is kind of this deadly but like broken character. And I think we see a lot more of her range when we get the character of Samantha engaging with the young 8-year-old Emily.
8 3/4.
8 3/4.
Very specifically
8 3/4.
Comes up a lot in the movie.
But we can see that Sam is seeing a lot of herself in this little girl.
Yeah, she's kind of projecting.
Yeah, kind of projecting. Sam also killed the little girl's dad.
Yeah.
Whoopsies.
Wasn't going to at first. Literally said,
No.
I'm not in a killing mood.
Yeah.
But honestly, he's just like, I need to answer that. I need to answer the phone. And she's like, no. I feel like if he would have said, I need to answer the phone, it's for my daughter. I feel like because Sam had past issues with her own mom, I feel like if that would have been clear from the beginning, none of the shit that happened in the movie would have happened.
No.
But that's not how movies work.
I also sort of get the feeling that maybe they let him die at the hospital. Because we sort of... Sam tries to save this father.
Yeah.
After she shoots him in the stomach. And so she brings him to the hospital, but then shit goes super fucking sideways.
Yes.
And now Sam is wanted by the firm and by another guy whose son she accidentally killed. Not super important.
Truly not. It's weird.
No, it's kind of just to make more bad guys.
Yeah.
And so this guy was then left at the hospital with a bunch of thugs who are like, oh, well, like, maybe just let him die. And so, I don't know. I felt like that was a little bit more ambiguous.
Yeah.
But she still definitely feels like the guilt of it. And then there's a beautiful, like, reconciliation moment where she does eventually tell the little girl that she's the reason her dad's dead.
Yeah.
The little girl was like, yeah, like, well, who sent you, essentially? Like, this little girl is extremely smart, and it's great.
Oh, yeah. I know. The whole vibe I got from Emily was that she was like, I wrote it down 1 second. I googled the trope because I wanted to be very specific about it. It's called Wild Beyond Their Years. Basically, it's when a child is like very, very smart or wise or acts older than they are for whatever reason that's happened in their life. And Emily definitely, especially near the end, at first it was just like, oh, a quirky, cute little girl that knows interesting facts.
Yeah.
And definitions of things and loves watching the History Channel.
Yes, loves the History Channel.
But definitely later on, especially because of what she's doing with Sam.
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of like amps up she's gone through a lot of shit, maybe even before meeting Sam.
Yeah.
Because we find out her dad's the only living relative she has.
Yes.
And he's an absentee father kind of figure.
Yeah. But yeah, she eventually is like, well, no, like who sent you? So she's able to understand, which I think they did a really good job at not making her that annoying little kid in action movies. Yeah. Because so often I'm just like, oh my God, this kid is terrible and I want them to be gone. But she was endearing and she was like clever and sweet. And that actress did an amazing job.
Yeah, it was also very much like, you know, that sort of trope in movies where there's an adult figure of some kind, whether it's a literal parent or someone who's filling the role of a said parent type, and they're doing fighting crime scenes. They're doing something. They're fighting something, and there's a child with them all the time. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it was interesting to see that with Sam.
Yeah.
Because in a way, there was also the parental substitute.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Sam was at for Emily, and Sam was also, like, making sure Emily was going to be okay in weird ways, not wanting her to kind of, like, go through what she did as a child, which I think kind of, like, led to her feeling that she missed out, because she would call it all the time, the libraries were the best year of her life when she was at the library.
Yeah.
Which I think we should talk about that, because we've skimmed that a lot, and we're jumping around. I know we're jumping around a bit, but literally the movie is just like...
It's extremely linear. It's,
fighting.
Yeah, it's a lot of fighting. Incredible fight scenes. Like,
the dentist hallway
scene. Yes.
But we have to get to that after I think we talk about the librarians, because I love the librarians.
Yes. And the actress for the little girl is Chloe Coleman.
Chloe Coleman.
Very good job.
I think she did an awesome job portraying a child who is 8 3/4.
Just generally adorable. So, oh man, how well they structured the difference between the way they showed the firm and all of these other places versus the way that they showed the library. It is warm, like there's stuff everywhere. It's like whimsical. Also alludes to a secret. Yeah, and like dark secrets. It's very like matriarchal. It has a lot more seemingly like feminine touches. It's not quite so cold and stark compared to the firm, which is very literally. Think of just any office, any fancy office with leather chairs, a mahogany desk, CEOs, and then all of a sudden a woman opens the door and shit you not. I'm not saying this to upset any man listening to this, but out into the firm just walks like 30 old white men that just have so many old dudes. So many old dudes. The only men of color happened to be the people who were like the thugs of the show. Yeah. So there was no sort of I think there might have been one of like the head CEOs, but it was quite short little moments, but it was at first glance it didn't look like there were any men of color in power at the firm. Yeah. So we have our 3 librarians. Oh. So we have Madeline, played by Carla Gugino. Love Madeline. We have Anna May, played by Angela Bassett. And we have Florence, played by Michelle Yeoh. Oh my god, these 3 women are... They're... Truly, I wanted more spotlight for them. I want a movie just about them. I want to know became the librarian, where this library came from, how this became what they started doing. But I also want to touch on their aesthetics as well, like I had mentioned. Yes. So we have our like the 3 matriarchs, which is also like a very common kind of storytelling thing, where you have your three hags in Macbeth. You have your fairy godmothers in Sleeping Beauty, like the 3 main muses. The 3 muses. It's a very common like literary theme. And they have this varying degrees of masculine dress. So Anna May has far more masculine than the other 3. Got like a professor vibe. Yeah, so her suit isn't quite as fitted. It is kind of muted palettes. And then we have Florence, and she has kind of a floral pattern blouse, but a fitted vest. And all of them are wearing slacks, because, I mean, who wants to try and fight people in a dress? Not me. And hers is much more feminine, but still quite stiff, and is a happy medium between the 3. And then last is Madeline, and she is like in pink, and she has this lovely little bow. She's it's a lot more feminine, soft. Yeah. Soft boy. Yes, soft, sweet.
That's a term
Goodness.
I don't know if I'm using it right. I'm sorry, Gen Zs, if any of you are listening to this. I just heard some students one day being like, this person dresses like a soft boy fashion, and I just imagine soft boy probably not being what the definition is. And I'm too lazy to look it up right now.
That's fair.
So I'm sorry.
So yeah, you have these 3 different looking women, and they all have varying personalities, and they're all clever and smart, and you can just tell that they've all like seen some shit and dealt with it in very different ways. So I want more from them, because these 3 actresses too are just, my God.
Oh, I know.
They're just so good. Any movie that I see them in, I'm just like, fuck, like, damn, these women can act like actors.
Actors. It did feel cheesy in some ways, though.
Oh,
Like
yes.
the whole movie itself, very cheesy.
Yeah.
A lot of like one-liners that were kind of like okay, but also not okay.
Yeah, like it's classic action movie stuff though, but it has a new skin, which is one of those things that a lot of people are talking about right now, that they're like, we're not asking for like Oscar level representation. It's like, what we're asking for is like basic level shit with better representation in it. I want a basic ass action movie with women in it. We want a basic ass rom-com with Asian people in it, which we got in Crazy Rich Asians. Like, I fucking love that movie, and it's like, we want more of that. We have a ton too many rom-coms with boring white people in them. We can have other more interesting stories that are still fun and cheesy, and they don't have to be the most miraculous, most amazing thing ever. It's like, we can have
a bare minimum,
like, just stuff. We can have people be in movies, and that movie is allowed to be bad, because I cannot count the amount of shitty action movies I have watched that are just fucking terrible. But all those actors still get to make more action movies. All those directors still get to make more action movies. Standard Alison rant, just because something is led by women and still like fails, because this one, the movie itself wasn't particularly. The movie
I heard
itself,
the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and with its audience weren't super good.
Yeah, but it's like, so many people just jump to the blame the women or blame that. It's like, no, fuck off. Like, some people might just not have liked it. Like, it doesn't mean that we should have less of this, and that happens a lot. Like, for example, the Birds of Prey movie, it came out, it was just as successful as a bunch of other movies that came out that were male-led, but because it was female-led and female-directed, everybody was, like, shitting on it. They're like, it was a failure, it was all these things. It was like, no, actually, it was just as successful as many other movies, but you're just biased and shitty. Like,
yeah, like, it's okay to I right after Alison and I watched it, I was just reading some other like information on it, because I was trying to figure out shit about the director and the writers, just to be like, okay, I want to like have some information in my back pocket while talking about it. And some of the reviews talked about how the movie is like the script itself, as we've established, doesn't dive deep into any deep conversation. But what movie that's going to only have one of its, like, we don't know if there's going to be more.
Have you seen Terminator? Have you seen Predator? Have you seen any fucking action movie?
Yeah, it starts out very bare minimum. Granted, John Wick gets more information because there's more movies for that series, but this was it. I get that it reached like the bare minimum when it came to sort of like deep depth conversations between the female cast. I get that it's, you know, maybe they could have done more. Like, I totally understand that there's all these ifs that they could have tried to do. But also, I don't know about you, Alison, but I've become very comfortable being like, I don't always have to think a movie is A+.
No.
To enjoy
I just want to have fun.
I know.
Like, I got as much information out of this movie as I did out of the first John Wick movie, because dude's wife dies, somebody kills his puppy, he goes and kills people. It's not a fucking deep movie. Like, this isn't either, and it doesn't have to be. Like, one piece of media doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all of feminism or representation or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
It just needs to do something and have fun doing it. And
like Venom.
Like Venom.
Did you hear how it got a Rotten Tomatoes score of 69
Oh, that's
for the second Venom movie? And I just feel like that itself speaks volumes to the type of movie that Venom is.
But yeah, it's like we can have mediocre movies and people can still enjoy them.
Oh, like Jupiter Ascending.
Like Jupiter Ascending. That movie was a dumpster fire of a movie.
I watched it 4 times.
I had no idea what was happening the whole movie. Does it mean that I think that it needs to not be around or to not get a sequel or whatever? A bunch of people fucking loved it. Like,
and this movie had a lot of things that were really good. Like the librarians.
Like the librarians.
Solely loved them.
And like, kind of on the topic of like, just being an action movie, we get to watch action movie tropes done by women, like a parkade car fight. That shit, I've seen it so many times in action movies. It was awesome. There was a girl driving. She didn't have her arms, so the little girl was driving in Sam's lap.
So, reason why she didn't have her arms, they were like numb from some sort of drug.
Yeah, yeah. So the little girl had to drive and she had to use the pedals for the gas. It was great.
It was really funny.
You have them taking like random unconventional weapons. So you see these women fighting not just with guns, but they have like chains and like
a
hammers
bar.
and like chucking whatever they have, and you see them kind of using whatever they have,
a panda suitcase.
A suitcase. Like you have them using these incredible like adaptable things to fight with. You have a standard fighting while restrained, so she has lost the ability to use both of her arms. I have seen tons of fight scenes where some dude is tied up or whatever, like he can't fight with all of his limbs, and so they get to fight. I got to see a girl do that. That was awesome. It was excellent.
The scene Alison's talking about is when they're in the weird I'm gonna call it the dentist
doctors, whatever it is.
It was so funny because earlier she's beating up the same 3 like stooges that she beat up in the bowling alley scene. So they're hurt, like they're physically injured. And of course, if Sam was at her best, they would have no goddamn chance. So they're high off of laughing gas and convince the dentist doctor dude to help them out. So he numbs her arms. So they're literally pool noodles. And she's like fighting in this weird way, making it work. But she's not at her best fighting people who are very, very shitty and fucked up. Yeah. And still kicks their ass.
Yeah, so it's still fun to watch. We get classic outnumbered scene multiple times when they are having to fight against astronomical odds and they end up succeeding. We get badass slow motion walks. We get super slow-mo action sequences where all the blood and guts are really slow. And Lena Headey gets to do the shotgun flip, where it's like like a flip shotgun, and she flips it and she spins it around, and it's so sexy, and I'm just like, oh my god,
really cool. I enjoyed it.
It's so hot. It's basically a copy of the of a scene from, I think it's Terminator 2.
Okay.
Where Arnold Schwarzenegger does it while he's on a motorcycle. And so it's just like, it's a little callback to another like super badass scene, but it's a woman doing it, and it's great, and I love it.
Yeah, the scene Alison's talking about is like very much so near the end. They're having like, they all fight in the diner, and again, all of these guys don't have guns, but they do have other hidden weapons like knives, axes, hammers, machete, except for one dude, he's called the nephew. He snuck in a gun somehow.
He did sneak in a gun.
But that was a really cool scene because it was a sort of kind of like, it was always a neutral place, the diner. And the mom of Sam's character ends up making a comment being like, sometimes you gotta take a side.
Yeah.
And I think it was a nod to sort of like how the librarians, the people at the diner, like they're supposed to be neutral, but it doesn't ever seem to work out for the people that are being neutral. So it was kind of neat to see all these women dressed as like diner maids just like kicking ass and taking names in like a very slow panoramic shot.
So
one dude got
good.
his eye stabbed because a lady slammed his head into a milkshake glass.
Oh, it was so gross. It was so good,
It was
though.
so gross. One dude did get a stab at what's her
Michelle Yeoh's character.
Michelle Yeoh's character. They got a stab at her eye, which later she gets a really cool eye patch.
She does get a cool eye
patch. But there's this like, I don't know, there's a lot of really cool things about the movie in terms of just seeing these female characters do all these things that you wouldn't get to see as often. Not to say that there aren't more cool movies coming out where there's a lot of women fighting, but it was really sort of neat just to see a mediocre movie have that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And well, a lot of the fighting I found was very, it was very well done because like it was clear that a lot of these men are stronger than them, but they find different ways of like fighting back and sneaking around. There's a whole hammer fight scene, which is just like, the chills that it gives you just to think about how much that would hurt. And the funny thing about the library is that like all of the books have like shit hidden in them. So you're seeing them like run through the library and they're pulling books off the shelves and they're finding random guns and like all sorts of knives and cool shit everywhere. And it's just this like super like so many epic fight scenes in all of these areas. And this is a big spoiler, I guess, but there's an incredible scene with Madeline, the one played by Carla Gugino. She is protecting Emily in a van in like the basement of the library. And she gets Emily to put on headphones so she doesn't have to hear. And then she fucking takes her hair out and it like falls down and then she like pops out of the top of the van with like a fucking machine gun. And I'm just like...
Allison's jaw dropped when we were watching.
I was awestruck. It was incredible. And she just starts fucking blowing him all the way. And it was just... and then you feel so bad because it's like she gets to play that other classic trope, which is giving your life to try and protect somebody. But then it's made extra sad because she fails.
Yeah.
So she's trying to protect the little girl, and then the shitty nephew gets in there and he shoots her, but she like does everything she can to fight him off with this
tomahawk.
with a fucking badass axe with like etching all over it. Oh my god, it's such a good fight scene and it's so like well done and emotional, and it's just that classic pull your heartstrings action movie moment, self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
I am a bitch for self-sacrifice moments in any action movie. And it was so well done and just so many awesome moments where I was just like wanting to like cheer and get excited because it was just these like badass sequence after badass sequence that I get to see women do, and it was so fun.
I know, it was really nice. Like, I'm trying to think if there's anything deep I could talk about it. There isn't. I'm gonna be honest. There isn't anything I can deep dive into.
No.
Unless you just want me to talk about the fact that, was it queer? I don't know. Was it a hardcore feminist movie? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of things that they did that I just liked. And I can project the things that I got from it and take away from it. So to me, it felt like a queer movie.
Yeah.
To me, it felt like it was touching on notes of femininity and masculinity and how, even though in the firm, you know, it was a bunch of men versus... The movie was men versus women.
Yes.
But none of the men treated the women like they were less than. Like, they all were afraid of Sam, the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
Like, literally, they needed Three Stooges to kick Sam's ass, and they couldn't. And Sam even talked about how, like, she has no problem fighting other women. She didn't. I thought it would have been cool, because it kind of brought up that she's like, I have no problems fighting women. I'm like, are we going to have another woman that she has to fight against?
No.
Didn't happen. I don't give a shit. That's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever. But, like... I don't know. I just liked it.
Yeah,
it was campy. Is that the right word?
Like, when Sam goes, the first time we see the library, Sam goes to get, like, basically her weapons are two people recognize her weapons too much, so she has to go trade out her weapons. And she goes there, and they're handing her books like Jane Eyre and Pride and Prejudice, and
a Jane Austen.
And it's just these funny little like quips, like female authors or like standard like female things like that. And like there's one line where they're fighting in the library, and the mom, Sam and Scarlett, her mom, are like hiding behind a desk. Some guy was like, yeah, like, we've got you outnumbered, or like, we've got an army. And Sam yells out, well, I've got my mom. It's like, it's so cheesy and dumb, but I loved it.
I know, it was kind of at first when I heard it, I was like, what? Like, the delivery was kind of weird in a way, and I think that's only because of Sam's character, not because of Karen Gillan. I think Sam's just awkward and weird and emotionally distant, and that was the first time that she acknowledged her mom was there to help. Yeah. So it was kind of like weird and awkward in a way for the delivery, which was fine. Yeah.
Well, it reminded me of the Loki where he's like, I've got an army, and it's like, well, we've got a Hulk, and it's so it kind of like felt to me like a little throwback to that. And that was just freaking hilarious and so good. I was just like, what the fuck?
Like, if there's anything I could tell anyone for this movie, if you were unsure based off our weird rantings, back and forth conversations about like weird things happening, watch it if only for the dentist scene. It's the dentist fight scene. Yeah, that's what I want everyone to watch. I'd stick around
for the library scene, because watching Michelle Yeoh just fuck guys up with a chain for a while is great, and watching Angela Bassett fuck guys up with hammers,
it was
also excellent.
There was a scene where she like hammers a guy down at the back end of the
claw end,
and it goes right into his jaw, and you just hear his teeth make that sound, and Alison and I were just like, ooh,
it's so bad, because like it's a fun action movie. Like, go in and just have fun with it, right? Like, if you enjoy those kinds of action movies, like, it did give me very very John Wick vibes. Like, it was just, it's a vehicle for fun fight scenes and fun action scenes.
And it doesn't have to be the next, like, big in-depth movie that people are going to talk about in like university classes on, like, you know what I mean? Like, just go in not having expectations. Yeah. And you're really gonna enjoy it. That's all I have to say.
It's cute. Like, at the end, it's adorable because, like, we see all of these women very masculinely dressed while they are in a place where they are forced to fight against masculine superpowers. Yeah. Who are all coming against them, and they're kind of in a male-dominated world. Yeah. Whereas at the end, where they're all getting away, they're in this, like, pastel van. They all have, like, frilly tops, and they're all, like...
They look like they're going on vacation.
They look like they're going on vacation. It's, like, sunny, and it's, like, I think maybe the first time we see daylight in the movie. Yeah. And it's this kind of... Like, if you want to dig into it, it's a moment of them getting to actually embrace their, like... their feminine side, their softer side, because they have escaped from the male-dominated world. They are able to escape. They're able to just go and be happy. And it's this really, like, little beautiful, like, ride off into the sunset scene, if you want to dig into it. If not, it's just cute. And it's bright and light, and just visually speaking, is different than the rest of the movie. Yeah. And it's a happy ending. Yeah. Which is great.
It's quite nice. It's quite nice. So, Alison, can I ask you, before we dive into finishing everything off, what was one thing from the movie that, if anyone was to ask you right now that didn't listen to this podcast, hey, I'm thinking of watching Gunpowder and Milkshakes, have you seen it? What's sort of like one thing you would say to someone wanting to know if you've seen the movie, but you don't want to give them spoilers?
Okay. If you're thinking about watching this movie, and you've made it this far without obviously wanting to watch the movie, if you like aesthetically pleasing action movies, like something like John Wick, it's that with a feminine spin. And that's it. It's colorful, it's action-packed, a little gory, which is
fake blood.
Lots of fake blood, so much fake blood. But yeah, like, it's a very aesthetically interesting movie to watch. Mm-hmm. Whether you enjoy the story or not, it's pretty. What about you?
I think I would tell people that if you're not convinced to watch it, but you really want to watch something that can be mindless, but you can sort of like immerse yourself in, and you're looking for something that's sort of like impressive in terms of like combat fight scenes. And I couldn't predict the ending of this movie because it was just going at so many different directions all the time with how things were. If you like that, where you can't predict where a movie's going ahead of time and it keeps your interest, I would recommend this movie.
Yeah.
I thought it did a good job.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot. If you like cars...
Yes.
Good car scene in that movie, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one where the kid drives.
It's very good.
It's pretty good.
And the thing that I like about the kind of resolution for the female characters in this movie is that line in the diner where they're like, you have to pick a side.
Yeah.
That in a world as tumultuous as we're in right now, it's one of those things where neutrality in cases of like violence and oppression is harmful. And so it's like you do have to pick a side. And I think that finally these women, these matriarchs, in seeing a girl that they had watched raise, and then in seeing an even younger girl that would probably reminded them of a young Samantha in danger, they realized that by staying out of the fight, they were letting more people get hurt.
Yeah.
And it was this like really probably the one moment of depth in the or probably one of the few moments of depth. I'll give it more than that. Yeah. But yeah, it's like it was time for them to step up, and it was excellent to see. And they had lost a friend.
Yeah.
Possibly a lover, question mark.
Who's to say? We don't know.
We don't know. There was a little whisper that happened that made me feel like maybe Madeline and Florence were together. And maybe Anna May, like Angela Bassett's character, kind of seemed like
they liked
her
Scarlett.
And Scarlett. So like Lena Headey's character had maybe had a thing. It was nothing. It was all like subtext, kind of.
Nothing was addressed, which is kind of nice.
Which is fine
because we didn't. I think I would have disliked it if at the forefront they were pushing, oh, these are queer characters.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's nice to have someone's queerness not be their only character trait.
Yeah. Yeah, and I find that a lot of times people can kind of hone in on that and can focus on that a little bit too much, especially in a movie where you are already going to be fighting against.
And there's already going to be people dying.
Yeah, but I just mean, like, as far as viewer-wise goes, in a movie like this, you're already going to be going against so much. I'm not saying that this means that you shouldn't put in, like, canonically queer characters in media. I'm not saying that at all. But sometimes it's easier to just have it be what it is, which is a fun action movie. Like, it doesn't need to be some, like, queer or feminist text. It's just fun, and there's ladies.
I know. Things can have elements of tons of stuff without it having to be the only main thing in the...
Yeah, and if you watch this, like me, and it's just a bunch of lesbian aunts, and it's all one big happy family, then... Hi, I agree. If you watch it and you don't see that, cool. That's fine too.
That's fine. If you watch it, you're like, oh, cool, a found family. That's what I got. Yeah. Okay, so before we end off, we actually have some news.
Yeah.
I wish we could say we were making money. No, just joking. We're doing this for fun. I'm joking. Allison and I, mainly Allison, because she's the one that has all the files on her wonderful laptop, has been working towards getting everything on YouTube.
Yay.
So as of October 10th?
10th. Yeah, that's when they're all scheduled to start showing up. If you don't have a podcasty thingy, or if you're just at your desktop and you would prefer to listen through your desktop on YouTube, you can find us at Wench Bench Pod. Yeah.
At YouTube. We're going to have all of the episodes we have already released up there, and all future stuff will be going there. So that's another new place to find us.
Yeah.
Another way to comment.
We'll see.
We'll see. I mean, if it goes south, there's always a block feature, depending on how things go. But as always, you can find us wherever podcasts can be found. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow us on Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and YouTube at Wench Bench Pod. And if you would like to reach out, like maybe you have a movie suggestion. I'm just saying. You can send us an email at wenchbenchpod@gmail.com. All of the art for the Wench Bench was designed by the wonderful Tessa Joyce Riecken. You can find her on Twitter and Instagram at Werevile. Thank you very much for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
I don't know why I sound so sad.
So sad.
I'm sad we have to go. Goodbye. My long lost friend.
I'm really hungry.
Fine, just make your craft dinner. It's fine. I don't care.
That's my comic, by the way.
Well, move your fucking comics.
God dang, man.
What did you say?
I said god dang.
Fart on you.
No, you won't.
Yeah,
Leave me
Are
alone.
you recording?
Yes, it's still recording.
No. My gosh.